Hello, everyone, and welcome to RevMD Sex Bites podcast with me, your host, Dr. Deborah Durst, and my co-host, Faraday.
Hey guys, Faraday Golombieski, nurse practitioner at Revitalize MD, and we have a fun one for you today.
That's right. So, is too much porn affecting your bedroom performance? So that is our topic today. It was actually requested, right?
Our camera guys over here.
Yeah.
We're real excited to hear where this conversation is going, but I think that what he thinks is going to happen is going to be better than what it is.
Yeah.
But he may not like the way this
he was
turns.
Definitely excited for this one, though. So anyhow, pornography, again, there's been lots of different, at least studies that suggest that too much of it is a bad thing for actual in-person sexual function and sexual performance.
And brain activity, that it actually decreases brain activity. So there is lots of correlating overstimulation of pornography to negatively in your relationships, your bedroom, and the stimuli you need to continue to be aroused.
So if we think about pornography and how it's changed even, so I would think that, way back it started with just images. And again, we talked about that. Is Playboy even still a thing?
That's what I would say. I'm like, can you even go and buy a Playboy anymore? This is in the last 10 years, think of how technology has changed.
Yeah.
I mean, we pretty much walk around with a computer in our pocket and you can find anything, anywhere. At any time.
Video, anything.
Yeah, really anything you want to look up, you can probably find on the internet somewhere.
Correct.
Whether it is through a Google search or in the dark web. I don't really exactly know what that means, but I know it's a place that exists.
Exactly. There's all kinds of things out there. So
exactly.
Does anybody even buy a magazine?
Right?
Yeah. I wouldn't think that was, and I would think that if you were buying those, you would do it online because you have your phone right there and you can see pictures, but are images enough? I mean, when you can have video, and then it started as soft porn. So,
exactly.
Where was a hint of, and
so even the progression, like you were saying, is it starts with, these magazines that were black on the front, right? So you couldn't see anything that, guys or girls, or whatever, would be stealing from their parents or, paying someone to buy for them in a store or whatever it was because you had to be 18 to buy them. And then that progression has then turned in, like Dr. Durst was saying, to soft porn. And then when that stimulation is not enough, we go to hard porn.
Mm-hmm.
And then when that stimulation is not enough, the research is pointing that then people are looking into kink and aggression and violence, and that it continues to progress, but to what extent? And then how does that translate in the bedroom?
Yeah. And then there's a fine line again between, kink and violence. And so again, the kink just continues to the things that I hear about. And, again, there's just so many different avenues for it. And so, but again, we talk about this on a daily basis. So the things that I hear, we're always learning, put it that way. And there's
every day.
And there's a lot to learn for sure. And so it's just changed so much over time. So there's some brain changes that happen when you're watching porn.
Absolutely.
And so Faraday's going to go into a little bit of that.
Yeah, there are some studies out there. JAMA Psychology back in 2014 did MRI imaging, and they put out a study showing that actually the gray matter of your brain decreases with increased porn activity, and that it affects the frontal part of the brain. Mm-hmm. So this is the part of the brain that is responsible for making logical decisions and reasoning. So to think that you can actually see changes in brain activity that correlates with the hours of porn that you watch is really scary when you think about it, considering that younger teenagers, younger children have
when their brain are still developing.
Exactly. If we're seeing this in adult men, in this study, there were 64 patients that they had looked at. If we're seeing these kind of changes in adults, what kind of changes are we going to see in younger children that are still developing? But again, if we are constantly, so our brain seeks out a reward system, right? Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that it's our happy drug, right? So let's start with images. We look at pornographic images. We release dopamine. It comes to a point where we don't get that same dopamine release by looking at that. So then we watch soft porn and we get a dopamine release. That dopamine release, we become acclimated to it and we need more. So the body replaces and produces dopamine to the point that it becomes overloaded with it, and we need more and more stimuli to get that same response.
And then even as you increase your dopamine, so as you have too much of it, then your receptors are going to go down. And
exactly.
So you have decreased receptors for it because you have an overabundance of it. And so it's just a negative feedback loop between pornography watching in the brain that ultimately ends in some destruction of brain, or neurons in the brain, which are seen with MRI images of adults. And again, that developing brain is going to be way more susceptible to that in opinion. So again, I don't know that we have studies yet, but there's a lot of ED seen in younger men. So in the 40s, definitely under 40. And I don't think your traditional reasons for it, such as high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, are accounting for the significant rise in ED and 30 and 40-year-olds. So
exactly, and the significant rise in the pornography industry.
Yeah,
we never want to come out. We don't kink shame people. We don't shame you for your choices sexually. What you do at home is completely up to you. But definitely, if you are finding yourself needing to look at more and more and more and more, and how that's affecting your relationship, if it's affecting it negatively, this is something that you need to hear, because maybe it's time to take a break or step back from it. Because what it does translate into a relationship is then, how are we, like Dr. Durst kind of hinted on it. Okay, so we're seeing 30 and 40-year-olds with erectile dysfunction. If it is correlating to the amount of pornography that you're needing, you're not able to get enough stimuli in the bedroom with a real human being to get that stimulation to get erect fully. So if that is occurring,
then that is the time that's a problem.
That's a problem.
And so the issue is that it's not that it can't be corrected. And there are some studies that kind of suggest that maybe it is a long lasting, but honestly, there's so much neuroplasticity, period. Yes. And then there's lots of other studies that will hint at or recommend, again, it's an addictive behavior. So a withdrawal from that and behavioral modification is necessary, especially if you're noticing. So if it's fine. And again, it does vary on the amount of porn that you're watching. So pornography has been also shown to increase sexual performance in the bedroom for some. And for couples, sometimes that's a beneficial and an enhancement for them. But if you're watching too much of it and now dependent on increasing amounts of it and increased visual stimulation and, progression of, again, what you're watching and you need more and more and you're getting like aroused or excited, that kind of, again, pleasure seeking just from thinking about looking for it.
Yeah, just surfing the web gets you excited.
Before you've even
reward
found
system.
Yeah, before you even found what you like. Yeah. So if you had to find more and different things that are going to excite instead of that same usual, then that's when you want to at least start thinking about dialing that back and doing some behavioral modification so that it doesn't affect relationships and actual interpersonal interactions and physical excitement and performance. So
like what Dr. Durst was saying, when pornography is not benefiting the bedroom.
Correct.
And we are taking steps backwards and you're unable to get aroused with your partner or unable to get erect with your partner or get to completion because you're not getting enough stimulation through touch. It's probably time to cut back on your porn usage. And there are some studies out there that talk about quitting cold turkey and what that looks like and not using what did it say? A click of a mouse and a hand.
Yeah, so
person-to-person touch.
Yeah, so like, again, behavioral modification where you actually withdraw maybe 2 to 6 weeks of no porn and instead you have physical relationships or physical touch where you're touching, they're touching you, and so that it's touch and not just you and a mouse, So,
exactly.
So that might actually be helpful for, some behavioral modification that would improve the symptoms. And again, I think there's neuroplasticity now where, so just like if you have destruction of brain cells, I do believe that you can build those neuro connections back, but you need to know when there's a problem that exists.
And a lot of that has to play around desensitivity and then, evaluate what you're looking at.
Well, so if you're progressing on your own with pornography and you have desensitization in the bedroom for an in-person encounter, that's an issue. And so that's when you need to start adjusting that pornography usage.
There was a few studies that even pointed to sexual aggression in the bedroom from increased pornography watching as well. So again, making sure that your wants and needs line up with your partner's wants and needs, and that we're not crossing any boundaries there. Again, like I said, we're not shaming anybody for their sexual choices. We want everyone to explore their sexuality and have lots of sex.
Yeah.
We want everyone to have sex.
Yeah.
We talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for, is to improve your sex life. However, when we go to extremes on anything, if too much of a good thing is too much of a good thing, and pornography is one of those things that it's not really talked about. It's taboo, right? There's going to be probably people that watch this and go, oh my gosh, they're talking about pornos. And yeah, we are, because it does play a part, and it can be beneficial. But when we see changes in brain waves and the way that the brain activity, and then again, it's affecting your home life with your relationships, that's a problem.
And again, just something to keep in mind. Number one, we talk about everything: pornography,
exactly,
vibrators, masturbation,
kinks.
like again, kinks.
We're always learning.
So anybody is open to discuss anything with us in the office, and we want them to be open, because if there is a problem such as this, that's going to play a decision. So we do some scoring systems, but nowhere in there does it actually ask what you're doing on your own at home, or if there's pornography use and all that. So we like to have those conversations that put everything into context. But again, if you have children at home and you have a young boy, or, teenagers or early adults, again, it's something to think about, because they have easy access to everything now.
Exactly.
And so if you're not monitoring their phone, then likewise, they have access to that, and
what they're being exposed to.
And this is something to be aware of, because their brain is developing. And so we want to make sure that they're aware that too much of that can be an issue. So it's
and
open
not just
conversations.
Boys, young girls too. They really have the
That's
world
true.
at their fingertips with their iPhones and their iPads. If they have Safari, Chrome, Firefox, whatever it may be, the search engine that they're using, DuckDuckGo, whatever, they have easy access to pornography. Men and women, young girls and boys, I think sometimes you can stumble across it. I have a young daughter that is going through puberty, and she was looking up some things about puberty, and some things came up on the computer that she was like, what is this? I'm like, oh, not for you. So it can even be innocent that they can stumble across things, and not all children talk to their parents about it. Thankfully, my daughter came to me and was like, hey, Mom.
Yeah. And those are the conversations. But you want to be open with them. And again, shaming children for exploring or denying that that's going to happen is just being unrealistic. And so the same thing happens in relationships. If you're not having sex with your partner, there's a good chance that your partner's seeking something else. And so having those conversations, or just denying that that's going to happen, is unrealistic. It's natural for men and women to want sex. So if that's not happening, then there's a potential that it is, but you just don't know about it. So open those conversations, never shame or guilt anyone. And again, that's why we like to incorporate it into our history and our medical history taking here when it comes to sexual function and optimizing it.
So we use shim scoring, which gives us a rating on erectile dysfunction. So she's right that in that scoring, it does not talk at all about pornography or visualization or movies or whatever it may be. So we could be scoring very low on our erection strength and performance. However, we could be having another conversation that says, well, I watch porn and am able to ejaculate without a problem. And that is a very different conversation and a very different reason, and treatment would be very different because of that.
Yeah.
Because it's not an erection issue, it's a stimulation issue.
And so there are studies. And so again, there's studies out there that do correlate it. There's more that need to be done, just because, again, the amount of erectile dysfunction in the increased frequency that we're seeing is not really accounted for, because it's not like we're living more unhealthily. It's not like high blood pressure, hypertension, hypercholesterol, or hypercholesterolemia, high cholesterol, diabetes. they're not increasing
No.
to the rate that erectile dysfunction is in younger people. So there was a study, 28,000 in an Italian study, and their Society of Andrology and Sexual Medicine, and they did a big study with 28,000 men that again led to decreased pornography watching. The frequency of it led to decreased libido. So with actual sexual, like pursuing sex with an actual person
Went down.
And then ED was a definite consequence. So we'll link what we have in the show notes so you can read a little bit more.
Yep.
And then again, if you have any other, input, experiences, suggestions, let us know in the comments so that we can address it.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to talk about, just let us know. If there's a topic we haven't covered so far, we would love to deep dive into anything sexual medicine. And we're here to revitalize your look, your health, and your sex life. And please do hit the bell, share, like, subscribe, all of the above.
We love the comments, especially on this one. I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.